and welcome to Army News. In our newscast, we have the story of how military training affects our environment. We also have the news of a unique basketball game that was played in Gagetown, and a story of how cooks and stewards work at 35,000 feet. But we begin our show with a soldier who just returned from a dangerous combat mission in Iraq. Very few Canadian senior officers have seen the modern-day battlefield. However, Colonel Steve Appleton is one of them. After spending 6 months in Iraq with the American military, I had the opportunity to find out what his experience will mean to the Canadian Army. In January 2004, Canadian Army Colonel Steve Appleton deployed with the 3rd Army, that is the Army of Central Command, and spent 6 months in Iraq as Chief of the Commander's Initiatives Group for Lieutenant General Sanchez. I had the opportunity to sit down with Colonel Appleton and find out what his experience in Iraq was like and how it will affect our Army. Colonel Appleton's duties and responsibilities were extensive.
I was head of what the Americans have as a think tank that serves the commanding general at the 3-star, 4-star level. I was in charge of this group. Well, for the first 3 months, I was the only one in this group because there were a number of shortages associated with our effort in Iraq, and I was the only guy in the Commander's Initiatives Group. Because of the nature of my task, which was primarily to plan the transition of sovereignty in Iraq, that took me a good 5 to 6 to 7 weeks to plan with a 22-person planning team.
The Iraqis are dealing with the ongoing conflict as good as can be expected.
When the Hussein regime was toppled, there was a time when the Iraqis saw the coalition force as liberators. However, their expectations exceeded what could be delivered. And with that gap came a distrust of the coalition and suspicion. As tragic as that war is, and will be for some time, that is a true war fighting scenario. The consequences of it are very important.
Tell me about your typical day in Iraq, sir, from the time you got up till the time you went to ground.
The first briefing for General Sanchez occurred at 0630. That means that staff were up everywhere from 0300 to 0400 preparing that briefing for him. From that briefing, we then go into planning of tasks that I had. It would not be uncommon for me to travel from Camp Victory, which was near the international airport, into Baghdad's green zone. And to do that, I would have a security team, a rotating security team between 8 and 10 American soldiers that would move 2 vehicles. I was in one of them, obviously, as our security blanket, and they would protect me everywhere I went. I would do work both in Camp Victory, which is where Multinational Force Headquarters' principal element was. I would do work in the green zone of Baghdad, which is where the Iraqi Governing Council and the interim Iraqi government was situated, as well as the U.S. State Department, as well as Ambassador Bremer and the CPA. I had work with them as well. I would travel back and forth. Our day would end anywhere between 2300 and 2330, and then we were back on again for first thing in the morning, and that's how we did it 7 days a week.
And final question, sir, is there anything that you would like to add with respect to your experience in Iraq?
If Canada were ever to make a substantive commitment to Iraq, well then I would see myself as being an experienced planner with regards to its entry and sustainment in Iraq successfully. Because I think what we do at the soldier level is second to none.
Very few senior Canadian officers have seen modern-day battlefields the way Colonel Appleton has in Iraq. Although some of his views might be seen as controversial, make no mistake, this man's war-fighting experience in Iraq could go a long way in shaping how Canada will participate in future operations. Sergeant Craig Reed, Army News, Toronto. In our next story, the Harlem Ambassadors took on the Gagetown Warriors at the Gagetown Recreation Center for a slam-dunkin' good time. Sergeant Todd Berry was there.
It was not just a basketball game between 2 competitive teams. It was a night of sheer entertainment in which spectators were encouraged to participate with the players. Steve Cymbaluk, the Assistant Recreational Director, talks about the charity event.
This is the first time they were hosting this type of event here in Gagetown, and I think it went very well, as you can see with the numbers that we saw tonight. So all the proceeds from the sales of the tickets are going to benefit the Armoured Food Bank in the local community too there. So
Lady Magic leads her 6-member team of highly skilled basketball players and entertains the crowd by orchestrating different interactive activities such as dancing, musical chairs, wrestling, and yes, the occasional do-si-do dancing with the opposition.
A lot of people have different gifts. I can't shoot a gun. I can't carry a weapon. I can't go to Iraq. I'm not going to hang out in Afghanistan. So this gift that I have, if I can spread joy and smiles and laughter for 2 hours to a family whose father or mother's overseas, or some kids, they lost their parents, then I'm going to do that. So the military is a way to reach out to all those young people, and even the mothers that are behind or the fathers that are behind, and let them know, hey, you know, we still know you're here, we care about you, and if we can do that, then we've done our job.
If you would like to know if the ambassadors will be in your neighborhood, check out their website at www.harlemambassadors.com. The final score tonight, Harlem Ambassadors 82, Gagetown Warriors 42. For Army News, I'm Sergeant Todd Berry.
For more information on your Army and other stories Army News has covered, visit your website at army.gc.ca.
Not all that many years ago, members could rely on this type of vehicle, the M113, in their work. The arrival of the LAV-3 revolutionized the way the infantry fights and transformed most of the combat trades. For the past 3 years, however, scientists at Defense Research Establishment Valcartier have been working on what may be a new generation of light armored vehicles. The project is named the Future Armored Vehicle System. You see, we're not all that far away from what might be called science fiction.
Project 3 was launched because most of the world's armies are exchanging their heavy vehicles for light ones. They're making extensive use of the LAVs on missions where they're not necessarily designed for, and they foresee many more such missions. This means that we have to modify the vehicle so that it can carry out those missions. In this project, we were obliged to develop a number of systems. We couldn't improve the vehicle significantly with just one system, so, among other things, we had to improve the sensors. Consequently, we have an infrared system and a radar system. We also have a data fusion system that gives us the best of both worlds and also eliminates the noise and false alarms. There is also a self-protection system, which as soon as it detects a threat, it will identify it, pinpoint its location, and deploy the specific countermeasure for that threat, and it'll do so in a very short time.
Shouldn't it also be mentioned that the camera system installed on the vehicle has the immersive vision helmet worn by the crew commander?
Yes, that's one of the beautiful elements of our project. Once again, its purpose was to create a better interface between the system and the user, the operator. We have a rather comprehensive system that we initially called the glass cockpit, which means that the person wearing the helmet inside the vehicle is able to see as if he were outside. If the operator turns his head to the left, the system will show him precisely what he would see if he were outside the vehicle. We also use this system to display everything it has detected. If the system has detected a threat, it will show it in order of priority. If one threat poses a greater danger than another, it will display it in order of priority. The system is able to focus on that threat, assess it, and then move on to the next threat. Our biggest challenge here is to structure several highly sophisticated technologies so they work together and perform well overall.
It's pretty clear that within a few years, if it is to be usable, it will have to be a lot smaller. Our goal here, however, was to assess what particular aspects were useful. After that, they will select the technology. Some of these systems may be used, but obviously all of them will not be in that specific form or size. So we're talking about a new infrared system, a microwave radar system, and a self-protection system. And all of these systems lead to a data fusion system. This information is then fed into a helmet that the crew commander will wear, a helmet that will display all the data and offers a 360-degree peripheral view outside the vehicle. In the next interview, I will describe the radar system, the infrared system, and the self-protection system in greater detail. This is Sergeant Cédric Hamel for Army News Valcartier.
My name is Corporal Toms, and I'm from 1 Dental Unit, Ottawa, and you're watching Army News.
The environment is a topic that is raised more and more in today's society. Even NATO has a subgroup which examines the impact of military training upon the environment. They were in Quebec City recently, and Sergeant Cédric Hamel has the story.
The NATO Environmental Training Working Group was in Quebec City from September 13th to the 16th. Military training experts and environmental advisors discussed ways of coordinating environmental concerns with training. I met with Mr. Daniel Leclerc and Colonel James Pollock, who told me about the work this group is doing.
The Environmental Training Working Group is a NATO working group. It works to the Army Steering Group, takes direction from them. It is a forum for identifying best practice for environmental training. There have been 4 main areas of discussion. The first of these is covering Natura 2000, which concerns sites of special scientific interest, in particular habitats for birds and other animals. Another subject is contaminated land. A third has been the environmental documentation that all countries have signed up to. The final issue has been Environmental Training Directive, the STANAG, the Standard NATO Agreement, which all NATO countries abide by, and Partnership for Peace countries. Many of them are choosing to follow this directive as well. Most countries have problems with asbestos in structures that were erected in the 1960s, maybe even the 1970s. And some countries have good ideas. We try and identify what those are, and we're a forum that can spread good techniques, best practice across the community.
We've improved a lot of things. First thing, at the policy level. When we started around 1995, the policies were not always clear. We've had the chance to talk it over with the countries, with our colleagues, and we've come up with policies that are probably more realistic. For example, new signs have been created. So when foreign units come and train in Canada, or when Canada goes to train abroad, people aren't lost. It's a bit like highway codes. You've got the same sign that can say, for example, this is a wildlife reserve or protected area. We're always learning important things. If you look internationally, most countries, the majority of armies have common challenges. Sure, we've got a long way to go, but under the circumstances, with all of the efforts we've made, with the resources we have, I think we're doing very, very well. And with each day, as our soldiers' awareness and general public's awareness grows, we're getting there. And we're going to continue to be good stewards of our environment.
As Mr. Leclerc just said, we have a lot of things still to learn, but there are also a lot of things we can teach other countries. For more information on this subject, visit our website, army.gc.ca. This is Sergeant Cédric Hamel reporting for Army News at Valcartier.
Does traveling and working at the same time trigger your curiosity? Well, for the cooks and stewards of the Canadian Forces, it is possible. We have the story of 2 cooks who were up for the challenge. Sergeant Daniel Susi reports.
Cooking out of a kitchen trailer demands certain abilities. Despite the fact that you have to face various climate conditions and also have to like camping, no matter what, the cooks remains the morale booster of the troops. But there's other challenge that takes part of the cook's trade, and that is to be a flight steward on board an aircraft. I have met with 2 Army cooks that were up for the challenge, which is to be a cook on board of a Challenger at 412 Transport Squadron.
First of all, we're responsible for the safety and the emergencies, also to feed and to provide a service to the VIP like Governor General, Prime Minister, and all the government cabinet. The flight could be through the mission 3 hours to 12 hours, all depends on where you go, if you cross the ocean or if you just go to Toronto.
As none of the flight are the same, this work takes a lot of preparation from one end to the other. Now that the aircraft is ready to leave, all we're waiting for is our VIP.
Good afternoon, Minister.
Good afternoon.
Sir. Good afternoon. Minister, may I take care of your luggage, your briefcase, your coats? Sir?
Well, that's fine, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. In case of emergency, the primary exit will be the one you went through. In case it's blocked, we proceed over wing exit, that's situated behind Mister. Okay, today, Minister, will be flying into Washington, 1 hour, 15 minutes in flight, and you will be served a hot meal.
The area that has the flight steward to prepare his meal remains very restricted, which involve planning and organization.
Minister, may I offer you a beverage? Here you go, Minister. You're welcome. Excuse me, Minister, I have to stow the table. We'll be starting descent shortly. I will take your glasses back. Please fasten your seatbelt and we'll start descent. Have a nice evening, Minister. Sir?
Thank you. It was a great flight.
Now that the VIP have vacated the aircraft, the flight is over. This is where we go into the final phase, which is clean up, which means put everything back to where it belongs and be ready for the next flight. Sergeant Racine finally logs his flying time and his mission is complete.
This is one of the few jobs that you get selected to come here. And if you're a successful candidate, the rewards are second to none. They just keep coming and coming, and I believe that's going to be following you for the rest of your career. There's not too many people out there in the military world or even in the civilian world that can sit back and say, I've done that. I flew around the world. I'm not saying the job is going to be all smiles from sunrise to sundown. There's a lot of long days. There's lots of, when you go into these foreign places and you have to provide a meal. And there's the language barrier that you have to get by. But knowing that after you leave that place, you did a successful mission, you tend to forget about the long hours and the aggravation you have along the way. And when the Prime Minister of Canada comes off the plane and says, "Thanks a lot, Dave. That was great. It's all worth it at the end."
For a cook working on a Challenger, it's certainly not the same as on the ship, a field kitchen, or even a conventional kitchen. The challenge, the experience, and the gratitude that this job brings is never to be forgotten. Here you have it, the possibility to bring forward your capability, your determination, and most of all, the passion of your trade. This is Sergeant Daniel Susi for Army News, Ottawa.
This is Army News, your news for your Army, and we would like to hear from you. We welcome your feedback. Please visit your website at army.gc.ca. With that, you're up to date. We thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week. For Army News, I'm Sergeant Craig Reed.